Hello, everyone. We will be getting started in just a few minutes. Before we do, I am going to hand this off first to our interpreter, Carla, who's going to give us instructions on how to access the simultaneous interpretation features for this webinar. Carla?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Carla Rubalcaba. I am with the Community Language Cooperative. Today, we'll be practicing language justice to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak and listen in the language they feel more comfortable with. To do this, we will use simultaneous interpretation between Spanish and English. I will say this in Spanish. When I finish, we will turn on the interpretation feature, and you will see like a little world map, 3 dots, depends if you're on a phone or in a computer, where it says more. You will get to choose the language you want. When you select it, click on Mute Original Audio so you don't hear both languages at the same time. If you only speak English, please choose English. If you're fully bilingual, feel free to listen to everyone's in their language. Since I'm going to be interpreting from English to Spanish, Spanish is about 15% longer than English, so it will take longer to interpret. Please try to stretch your words when you speak and make sure that you mute your audio when you're not speaking so I can hear only the person speaking and everything gets interpreted. Before we start, I would like to remind that everything said will be interpreted and will remain confidential. If you have any questions, you can send me a message. I'm going to say this in Spanish super fast so we can start. Give me 1 second. Hola a todos, mi nombre es Carla Rubalcaba y trabajo con Community Language Cooperative. Hoy practicaremos la justicia del idioma para asegurarnos de que todos tengan la oportunidad de hablar y de escuchar en el idioma en el que se sientan más cómodos. Para ello utilizaremos interpretación simultánea entre español e inglés. Lo que ustedes escucharon hace un momento fue esto mismo. Al terminar mi introducción, activaremos la función de interpretación y van a ver un mapa. 3 puntitos en la esquina de su pantalla, depende si están en un celular o en una computadora. Busquen donde dice More, que significa más, y podrán elegir el idioma que deseen, en este caso español. Al seleccionarlo, hagan clic en donde dice Mute Original Audio, que significa silenciar el audio original para que no escuchen ambos idiomas al mismo tiempo. Antes de comenzar, me gustaría recordarles que todo lo que se diga será interpretado y se mantendrá confidencial. Si tienen alguna pregunta, no duden en enviarme un mensaje por el chat. Empezaremos en unos momentos. Gracias. I believe we're all set up, so interpretation begins now.
Thank you so much, Carla. Really appreciate it. And welcome, everyone, to this very special Appleseed webinar on before and after deportation, how to prepare, protect, and rebuild. My name is Bennett Magnuson. I'm the Executive Director for the Appleseed Foundation. We have 2 Appleseed resources that we'll be going over today in our webinar. The first half of the webinar will be an overview of our manual on how to make a plan to protect children and finances for anyone who may be at potential risk of deportation. The second half of the webinar will be devoted to a companion manual for people who have been returned or have been deported to Mexico. That resource is specific to Mexico, but I want to reiterate that that portion of the webinar will also be relevant to everyone, including people from countries other than Mexico, because that manual provides a very thorough framework for how to work through common challenges that people face after deportation. A couple quick housekeeping items before we begin. We will be circulating the slides and recording to everyone after this webinar. If you have any questions during the webinar, please submit them using the Q&A function here in the Zoom menu. We very likely won't be able to respond to all questions during this webinar, so please also feel free to reach out to us at info@appleseednetwork.org after the webinar if you have any questions or suggestions for us. And finally, before we begin, a quick word about Appleseed. Appleseed is a network of 20 nonprofit justice centers across the US and Mexico, working together to advocate for prosperity, justice, and inclusive democracy for all. Appleseed does not provide individual legal advice or representation, but our mission is instead focused on systemic advocacy to address the root causes of poverty and injustice. You can learn more about our work at appleseednetwork.org. I am so incredibly grateful to all of you for joining us here today. Again, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at info@appleseednetwork.org if you ever have any questions or suggestions. we would love to partner with you in this work. With that, let me now hand this over to my colleague, Sarah Pasilio, who is going to kick us off with an overview of the Deportation Preparation Manual. Sarah?
Thank you so much, Bennett. I'm just going to share my screen here. Great. Well, again, thank you so much for the introduction, Bennett. And I am so excited to be here with all of you today and have the opportunity to speak with you all about Appleseed's Deportation Preparation Manual for Immigrant Families. And as just a note, the slide should also be shared with you in Spanish as well, so that you can follow along. The pages are numbered so that it will be easy for you. My name is Sarah. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Network Collaboration for Appleseed. That means that I get to work with our wonderful network of 20 different centers across the US and Mexico, as well as work with our pro bono partners at various law firms who helped us with this manual and helped us to prepare this information with you all. So I've been here for about 6 years now, and very excited to be able to share this updated resource with you all. So during today's session, I'm going to provide an overview of the resource. I'm also going to provide a preview of some select chapters, primarily focusing on powers of attorney, managing bank accounts, and child custody. If I have time, I have a couple other things I'll get to, but I will focus on those first three. And then I'll talk a little bit more about what's next. What are we doing with this manual? What's the future of it? And what more are we planning to provide in the future? And then I'll close it out and pass it over to Maru in Appleseed, Mexico. A couple of disclaimers before we get started. One, the information that I will share today and the information provided in the manual itself is generalized information, and laws often vary state to state. So that brings me to disclaimer number 2, which is to please, if you're able to seek legal advice or help others seek legal advice, that is absolutely the best option, although we know that that's not an option for everybody, which is why we have this resource for folks. And number 3, I'm not a lawyer. This was put together by our pro bono partners at several partner law firms and other organizations. We are happy to take questions in the chat. Again, we might not be able to answer all of them. However, this is really helpful for us to get feedback and questions that we need answers to in order to do future versions of this resource and continue to keep it as updated and modified as possible. So please feel free to put any questions in the chat. We will make sure to collect those. So number 1, you can find our resource on our website. The link is on the screen here, and I think will also be dropped into the chat. So a brief history about this manual. About 15 years ago, a coalition of banks and credit unions came to us with a really simple but important and pressing problem. When immigrants leave the US, they often leave money and property behind, and those assets end up sitting in accounts or vaults unclaimed. So these institutions asked us for a solution to make sure that those funds go back to their true owners and to protect families if a parent or guardian is deported. And so in response to this ask, we published our first manual back in 2010, and we've kept it up to date every few years ever since. So most recently with this updated 2025 revision. And the purpose of this manual is to provide immigrant families with information about making a really tough and difficult situation a little less devastating. It's about making sure that potential detentions or deportations don't completely destroy the lives of the families that they impact. It's not legal advice, but it's our way of empowering families to make a plan to ensure that a bad situation doesn't have to get even worse. The manual provides guidance on your options when it comes to protecting both your finances and your kids in the face of, again, a potential detention or deportation. And so it addresses practical questions like, how do I protect my children's assets if I'm no longer here in the country? How can I talk to my kids about this very difficult and often extremely traumatic situation in an age-appropriate way? What's a power of attorney, and how do I set one up? So it goes into detail about several of these questions and topics, and you can see here a list of contents that the manual covers. So again, it covers a wide range of topics. There are 20 chapters. These topics include managing bank accounts, managing owned property, your small businesses, vehicles in your car, any insurance policies, rental leases, and even things like remittances and how to safely transfer money across the border. It also includes special guidance for family and children and children's issues, including professional advice for parents to help them deal with painful psychological issues with their family members. And so the number one takeaway from this presentation and from the manual itself is that the plan is to make a plan. So the best time to make a plan for you and your family is right now, before a crisis happens. Um, so make a plan, any plan, or help those that you work with to make a plan. Um, you don't need to have every detail worked out, but doing something is better than doing nothing. And so with some preparation, your assets or the assets of those that you are assisting can remain safe and accessible through trusted contacts and legal tools. And this goes for any disaster planning. This is applicable to many different situations. Whenever there's a crisis situation, it's always good to have a plan in place, and this manual provides resources that can help you to do just that. So we know that even with this resource, even with this manual, it's still 200 pages. It's still a large document to dive into. So where do you even start at this process? Well, number one, my recommendations, number one is to gather information and important documents first. So start by listing your financial and legal responsibilities. This includes your bank accounts, your credit cards, any loans, utility contracts, insurance policies, property that you own, small businesses that you own, and anything that's owned in your children's name as well. And you can also start to gather documents like birth certificates, identification, and any work permits, custody orders, things like that, and make copies of that and make sure you know where they are. Number two, reach out to institutions. So contact your bank, landlord, lender, and anyone else who has ownership or holds any of the assets that you own. You want to understand your rights and options when it comes to that. So for example, can you list a foreign address on your bank account? How do you add someone to your account? How do you end a lease early? And knowing this in advance helps to avoid surprises in a crisis situation. Number three is talk to trusted people. So you have to choose people that you trust to handle responsibilities if needed. And these can be designated legally through things like a power of attorney, for example. So pick an emergency contact and as well as a backup one, and make sure that you carry their information both in your phone and in your wallet. And make sure that they know your plan in advance as well. Number 4, I think at that point, you can use our manual to figure out what works best for you. There's not often a one-size-fits-all answer. And so we lay out various options in the manual that can be effective tools for protecting family assets in the case of detention or deportation, so that families can determine the right plan for themselves given their unique circumstances. And of course, again, we always recommend speaking with a lawyer and seeking legal counsel if at all possible. But we also recognize that's often not an option, which is why we have this resource again. And number 5, write it down and share it. So document your plan, keep copies of your plan in a safe place, both physically and digitally. Make sure that your emergency contacts and any other appointed decision makers know what to do when the time comes. So at this point, I'm going to preview some select chapters of the manual itself. For some of you joining, that this information might be things that you already know, but I'm hoping that you take away some tools that will be immediately helpful. I've also included some checklists and action items or action lists in this presentation as well. As has been mentioned, we will be sharing these slides and the recording afterwards, so you're free to use this as a reference. Additionally, this information is also included in the manual, which you can find on our website. So first, I'm going to cover powers of attorney. These are applicable to the following chapters that I'll talk about today, as well as most of the chapters in the manual as well. And so it's just an important concept to understand. So what is a power of attorney? Well, a power of attorney is a written document that allows someone to choose another person, an agent, to act on their behalf. And this can be in regard to finances, their business, their property, or childcare, or all of the above. And why are these needed? Because you're able to give an agent the power to do things like sign a check from your bank account, or make decisions about your child's schooling and healthcare, or use your money to buy something or sell something major like a car, and more. And so if you are in the situation of facing deportation, again, you might need to legally designate somebody else to take care of these things for you. The other thing with powers of attorney that is really positive and helpful for these situations is that neither the principal nor the agent need to be an attorney. So this is a very accessible resource for people. So one example of this is you could grant a power of attorney to a family member to sell a house or end your rental agreement. And the list kind of goes on. And so what does this look like tangibly? This is a written document that identifies the state and county where it is applicable, the names of the principal and the agent, and it also designates what powers are given to the agent and when the document becomes effective. This can be immediately or after an event. I'll talk about that in a second. It also has to be signed by both the principal, so you or the person in the crisis situation, the agent, and typically a notary public or a witness of some sort. These do vary by state. And so there are several types of powers of attorney. There's a general power of attorney, which grants broad powers to the agent. So, for example, you can manage all finances or kind of anything in your name. And this is best for either really urgent needs. So, you don't have a lot of time to make a plan, or complex needs like selling a business where there are a lot of different components that you need to cover. There are limitations on these. You can't take oaths. You can't go through a marriage ceremony, for example, in someone's name, or you can't sign a will. So there are some protections. There's also a limited power of attorney, and so these are grant the agent with only very limited or specific powers. So you can only access one bank account, for example, and the agreement will document that. This can be used for, accessing one bank account, selling a house, caring for minor children. And this is usually a little bit more clear. Banks and schools and healthcare providers are typically more likely to accept a limited power of attorney. So this is best for most cases. Again, is a little bit clearer and a little bit more reliable. And finally, there's a springing power of attorney. So in many states, any power of attorney can be written as a springing power of attorney. This means that it only becomes effective after a triggering event happens, so after something occurs. So this is typically maybe used by people who are either sick, and you want the power of attorney to become effective only if they become too sick to make decisions or become incapacitated. This might be used in a deportation or detention circumstance if it's effective only if the principal is detained or deported. These are a little bit more rare, and so they may not be as widely accepted, but it is an option. And so the next question to ask for the power of attorney is, who do you choose to be an agent for you? Especially with things that are this valuable to you in your life, like your children and your family, or all of your assets. And so you want to make good decisions about this in line with your intentions. So ideally, this will be someone who is not also going to be subject to potential detention or deportation in the future. You want someone who's going to be financially reliable and literate, and someone who lives in the same state where the power of attorney will be used, because these do vary from state to state. And we also recommend naming a backup attorney or backup power of attorney in case the first choice can't serve at the time that you need them to. And then how long do they last? So there's a durable power of attorney, which lasts, is effective even after the principal becomes incapacitated. This can also mean after a detention or deportation happens and you're not able to act yourself. And they usually last until they're revoked in writing or until the principal dies or becomes incapacitated if it's not a durable power of attorney. They can also specify the date or event that ends it, so they're very customizable, which again is why they're good for this kind of situation. And note that you can also have multiple powers of attorney agreements for different things. So you can designate somebody to take care of selling your house or ending your rental lease, and then you can designate somebody else to take care of your children or a bank account or something. So you have flexibility. And so there are several steps to drafting a power of attorney. I won't go through this right now for time, but I will say that it is possible to draft a power of attorney once you've already been detained or deported. You can either work with a notary in a detention center. These do exist, and we provide more details about how to find those in the manual as well. Or use the apostle process abroad, which I think Maru might talk a little bit about too, which we also provide some details on in the manual. But you can there's several websites that have options for people to pay a small fee and generate a state specific form. And sometimes these have the ability to get those notarized virtually as well. We also provide in the manual a list of state templates for power of attorney agreements. And so you can find that again in the manual itself. That is a resource that we do have. And again, I provided some action items and a checklist here. I'm not going to go through this right now, but we will be sending this out afterwards and you'll have access to these slides. And again, the manual has a checklist as well. But hopefully this is a helpful starting place if you are in need of drafting a power of attorney or if you're helping others do the same. So the next topic I will go over is bank accounts. We get a lot of questions about what happens to your money when you leave. And so the good news is that you likely still have access to your money, but you have to plan ahead in order to deal with it safely and again, maintain access. And we want to encourage people not to withdraw all their money in cash. That's not necessary. But that being said, there are certainly challenges to maintaining a bank account from abroad that we want to consider and that we provide some options to deal with. So number one is it might be difficult to manage an account remotely. So you don't have a US phone number or address, and the bank doesn't allow you to have that um, or doesn't allow you to have a foreign address. There might be high fees for international transfers or if your account is inactive. You're also at higher risk of fraud as well. And then also you might have limited access to funds due to any other bank policies or verification hurdles. I know we all have two-factor authentication these days. And if there's any issue with your phone number not working well abroad or anything else related, that might it might make it harder for you to gain access to that account. So there's several options that we talk more about in the manual. One is consulting. So the first step before any of this, just to consult with your bank. Again, contact institutions, see what your options are. If you can have a foreign address or a foreign phone number, and what the options are for self-management if you don't already use things like a digital wallet or online banking. But number one is you can keep an account open. So you can, again, self-manage it via a mobile app or a desktop website. You could also add someone to your account who is not going to be leaving the US. So they have a joint bank account, in which case, typically they own everything in that account as well. So make sure it's someone that you trust. And this can be done sometimes online, sometimes in person, but again, another question for the bank. Or again, you can have a power of attorney that applies to this bank account where you designate somebody else to take care of it for you. If you have no more obligations in the US, you could consider closing the account altogether. So if you don't have to pay any US bills, this could be an option for you. And in that case, you would probably withdraw the funds via a check, wire transfer, or a prepaid card. Again, we encourage avoiding carrying cash across the border. But do be aware that if you're withdrawing, especially in the form of a check, make sure that whatever foreign bank that you plan to use accepts foreign checks from the US. We do provide more information on this in the manual itself, and on remittances and how to send money. But it is important to note that not all foreign bank accounts will accept the US check, so just double check that before you withdraw everything that way. This is also a good option to close the account if your bank account has fees for inactivity, and you won't be using it here. The final option is to open a safety deposit box. So adding a joint renter or another deputy that can keep the safety deposit box open for you. And so again, they have access to everything in there. But if you have a safe and trusted person that can manage this for you, and you maybe plan to be back in the US at some point, this is could be a good option for you. Again, I provided some checklist items, some action items here for reference. Again, I won't go through them, but they are in the presentation as you or the people that you're working with are working through these questions. So the final thing I think I'll talk about today is child custody. This is a really large topic, and there's a ton of other information in the manual itself. So I really encourage you to go check that out. But I'll provide some, higher level information right now that could be helpful in just thinking about what the steps might be to make a plan for your kids or for the children of families that you work with. So as we know, in the face of deportation, families might face incredibly wrenching decisions about child custody and what happens to their kids. So we outline the basic child custody issues facing immigrant parents and offer guidance on protecting parental rights before, during, and after deportation. So you can see on the slide, we've laid out some proactive steps that you can take before detention even happens. So number one, just identifying what is the current situation. So who currently has custody of the children? So is there joint custody? Does another parent have custody as well? And are they at risk of deportation? Do they already have, have you already designated a legal guardian for your children? If so, is that still up to date? Do any changes to custody need to be made? So just getting a lay of the land in terms of who currently has legal guardianship or custody is the first step here. Number two is to, if necessary, if there's no other trusted legal guardian, is to choose someone who can play that role if needed. So this can be a family member or a friend in the US, but this is somebody who you can rely on to have long-term care of your child. Number three is to make sure you formalize that arrangement. So verbal or oral agreements are not going to hold up. This needs to be, you need to grant legal authority to the trusted caregiver in this situation. This varies state by state. So one thing I'll kind of preview is that we are working on creating state-specific toolkits for all 50 US states that will give better guidance on what this looks like for you and in your state. But this can be a temporary guardianship, a standby guardianship, also things like a caregiver authorization affidavit, or as we discussed earlier, you can also use a power of attorney for this as well. And then finally, you'll want to gather important documents. So a child's birth certificate, passport, social security card, medical and school records, anything else, any custody orders, or again, formal guardianship agreements. make sure you keep copies of those with you at all times. Keep them handy, both digitally and physically, especially in case of an ICE stop. So we do have some guidance. Again, primarily our manual is about making a plan in case of detention. We don't provide information in the manual about your rights when it comes to ICE raids or warrants. There are plenty of other resources that do provide that information, but we do provide some guidance for parents if they are detained by ICE. So number one, during any arrest, a parent who's being detained must inform ICE um, that they have kids who need their care, and request not to be detained, and advise that you'll comply with ICE, but you need to make a phone call to a caretaker or emergency contact to arrange care for your kids and have someone go pick them up, or come pick them up. And so if your kids are with you and you're detained by ICE, you'll need to tell them that you need to call a caregiver or emergency contact to pick up the kids before any sort of child welfare agency intervenes in this instance. And this is a request that you should just repeat over and over again, and to every officer that you encounter, until you're able to actually contact that person who can come pick up the children. And so you'll have to tell your emergency contact or guardian that you're in ICE custody. Try and tell them where you are, and let them know to follow any emergency plans that you laid out in advance. So that, again, this kind of relies on having that plan set up in advance and communicating that. But if you have that set up, you can then, when you're able to contact them, put that plan into action. If your kids are not with you and you're detained, or if parents don't have children with them, you should tell ICE that you need to make a call to ensure that children are safe. So call any emergency contact and coordinate getting children to the designated caretaker as soon as possible. And then what if no one picks up the children when a parent is detained? This is, obviously one of the scariest things that can happen. In this case, a local child welfare agency could take custody of the children or the child. And so a caretaker or other contact needs to contact that local agency immediately and ask them to place those children under their care. In this case, again, it really helps to have that legal document, legal and formal caregiver authorization, so that the caregiver can provide proof to the agency. If no one steps forward, they might begin neglect or child welfare proceedings. During that time, a parent might have the right to an attorney, and children will likely get an attorney or other guardian placed by the state as well. You'll also be assigned a caseworker who will make recommendations on the case. And it's extremely important that there's good and frequent communication with this caseworker in order to maintain a good relationship, and also, again, to maintain the custody of the child ultimately. However, if the court who has issued this neglect, who has initiated this neglect proceeding, they might not know that the parent is detained. There might not be any communication about that. So if the children were not picked up by a caregiver, you need to make sure that you continue to try to contact that caregiver or any relatives or friends. When you contact them, you have to provide them with several things, including where you're located or where the detainee is located, a phone number for any court notices, your alien number that you're assigned, the name of the deportation officer, and the contact information and name of the caregiver themselves. And you have to ask that this person, whether it's the caregiver or anyone else, a relative or a friend that you're able to contact, provide that information to the court or agency involved in the proceedings. So say, once a deportation happens, there are several options for you and your children. One is to bring your kids. So in that case, you have to get consent from, if there is a joint custody agreement, you'll have to get consent from the other parent or guardian in writing. You have to ensure that a child has a passport or a visa. If they're born in the US, birth certificate, social security card, and any other important documents before leaving. If you want to keep the child in the US, again, that will require appointing a legal guardian via a court process. There's also the possibility to explore emancipation, which is usually at age 16 and up, but varies by state. Again, should all be considered in the context of your family, and also, again, with any legal support if you're able to. Some barriers to keep in mind are that courts might favor U.S. citizens as guardians. So that is something to consider. And also, if you're taking a child abroad, airlines might require even more special documentation for child travel. So you need to check with the airline before taking them on a flight. So again, we provide a lot more information in the manual itself. I'm trying to give a high-level overview, kind of the most important things here, but please do check that out if you are worried about this. And again, we have some information here on making a plan. So number one thing is just to have a caregiver appointed or in mind at least, as well as a backup in case they're not able to be reached. And I'm not going to go through the rest of these for time, but I will provide the slides for everybody, and we have this information again online on our website in the manual itself. So what's next? We have this manual. It has a lot of great information. It's a little hard to access, being 200 plus pages. Well, we have a interactive website and personalized toolkit resource coming soon. So in a few weeks, we're going to launch a website that has the manual broken down by chapter, topic, resource type, and it will also have a guided journey process for you to answer a few questions and then get a version of the manual created just for you. So it'll only have the chapters that are relevant to your situation. This will be available again in just a few weeks, and we'll be letting everyone know when it is published, especially if you sign up for our email list, which you should do if you have not already. Additionally, as I mentioned, we will have state-specific child custody and welfare toolkits available. Those are being worked on currently. We're looking forward to having those more personalized state-specific resources out as well. We're also planning to get the manual translated into more languages. We understand that everyone who is being detained right now or deported, not necessarily Spanish speakers. And so we are working on identifying and translating the resource into other languages to reach a broader audience. And then finally, I want to acknowledge some of the partners that made this possible. We worked with law firms like Ballard Spahr and Cooley and more to put this resource together and to update this resource. And then our manual and website design was by Design Action Collective, and our project was funded in part by the Annie Casey Foundation. And again, thank you so much for coming today. I am Again, so grateful to be able to have the time to speak with you all about this. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. My email is on the screen, or info@appleseednetwork.org. And then again, you can find the manual on our website, and we'll be sending out more information in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sarah. So we are now going to transition to the second part of this webinar, which focuses on a new resource from Appleseed Mexico that is for people who have returned or who have been deported to Mexico. As mentioned before, although this resource is specific to Mexico, it will be relevant to people from other countries as well, because the resource really provides a very thorough framework on how to work through common challenges that many people face after deportation to any country. This next portion of the webinar will be delivered in Spanish. So as a reminder, if you are an English speaker, you will need to click the English option on the interpretation button on the Zoom menu so that you can hear the live English translation of this presentation. And with that, let me hand this over to you, Maru Cortazar.
Thank you so much, Benner. And as you were saying, I'm going to talk in Spanish. So, bienvenidos nuevamente a todos y a todas. Muchas gracias por el interés. Consideramos desde Appleseed Network que estos materiales son de suma importancia para toda la comunidad que está viviendo momentos tan complicados. La porción de la que yo les voy a platicar es sobre una guía que desarrollamos y apoyamos a coordinar a una serie de firmas legales que agradecemos siempre todo su apoyo. Y es un poco como crear un espejo de lo que es la guía que desde el 2011 tenemos en Appleseed Network y que justamente Sara lo decía mucho. El plan es tener un plan. Es prepararse, es tener toda su documentación lista. Eso es un seguro de vida y les va a facilitar todo el proceso, tanto para la protección de bienes como para la custodia de sus hijos y los derechos parentales. Espero que también nos estén acompañando organizaciones de la sociedad civil que atienden a esta población y que esta información de las dos herramientas pueda ser de su utilidad. Si quieres, pasamos a la siguiente. Aquí nada más, perdón, Maggie, antes de pasar, agradecemos, pueden ver aquí las firmas de abogados que agradecemos siempre el apoyo que nos dan para la elaboración de estos materiales, a nuestros aliados como la Fundación Barra Mexicana, Cálice Abogados, Greenberg Traurig, Hogan Lovells, Holland and Knight, Jones Day, Rich Mueller, Sámano Abogados, y como pueden ver tenemos a Santa Marina, a von Boberser. Entonces ustedes aquí lo tienen y agradecemos porque es un número importante de abogados que abogadas y abogados que nos apoyan para crear este tipo de materiales. Si quieres, pasamos a la siguiente. Simplemente, al igual que Sara, agradecer nuevamente a estos despachos y decirles que el objetivo de esta guía es precisamente, y Bennett lo decía, para las personas que ya regresaron. La guía que Sara les platicó, que es la preparación, si es para las personas que aún están radicando en los Estados Unidos y que tienen o enfrentan el riesgo de la deportación. Es importante ahí que tengan este plan, que lo platiquen en familia, que tengan sus documentos apostillados, que hayan nombrado siempre con la confianza necesaria un apoderado legal, un tutor temporal a sus hijos. En este caso, el objetivo aquí de esta segunda herramienta es proporcionar la información que está legalmente bien fundamentada para las personas mexicanas que están en retorno, ya sea forzado o voluntario, y conozcan sus derechos y también sepan cómo ejercerlos y conocer los servicios que van a encontrar en su retorno. Las fases que tenemos es la publicación, socializarla con las organizaciones de la sociedad civil, la academia, gobiernos locales, todas las entidades de gobierno relacionadas para facilitar la reintegración de nuestros connacionales regresando a México. Reitero, esta información también puede ser útil para otras nacionalidades, como les decía Bennett. Son documentos vivos, están constantemente en cambio, estaremos haciendo actualizaciones y estaremos diseñando algunas infografías para facilitar su difusión y llegar a la población objetivo, que obviamente queremos hacerles llegar toda esta información que sabemos que será de su utilidad. Y también estaremos, al igual que la guía de Appleseed, explorando estas versiones digamos, interactivas, crear algún chatbot como para facilitar el acceso. La siguiente, por favor. Nuevamente, al igual que Sara les comentaba, el alcance de la responsabilidad de esta guía es importante decirlo. Es un documento que habla del momento de su publicación. Obviamente puede haber cambios. Siempre se recomienda consultar fuentes oficiales para tener algún dato actualizado. Tiene esta guía simplemente los fines de ser una herramienta informativa, no cubre ni pretende cubrir una relación o una asesoría legal, ¿sí? Y no puede ni podríamos pensar que comprenda todo el cumplimiento legal de cada tema que aborda la guía. Y obviamente en todo momento les recomendamos a los lectores y a la población que lo tomen como información, pero que siempre deberán consultar con asesores legales al respecto. Pasamos al siguiente, por favor. Gracias. ¿Qué tenemos como puntos claves de esta guía? Obviamente es una herramienta para ubicar servicios disponibles en México, tanto gubernamentales como de organizaciones de la sociedad civil y de gobiernos locales. Orienta sobre los documentos claves de identidad, que hablaremos un poco al respecto, CURP, INE, el número de seguridad social y cómo tramitarlos. Buscamos que facilite la inclusión financiera, explicando cómo abrir cuentas bancarias y acceder a productos financieros para personas repatriadas. Así, y también volvemos a hacer este espejo de cómo hacer uso de las cuentas y los bienes en cuestiones bancarias que hayan quedado en los Estados Unidos. También provee la información para prevenir y atender temas de violencia de género, incluyendo servicios de salud mental, legal y apoyo socioeconómico, como lo que es la búsqueda de medios de vida o de empleo, y ofrece una orientación sobre la revalidación de estudios, asesoría legal y hacer todo lo que serían casos de violación a los derechos humanos y desafortunadamente también de personas desaparecidas. En resumen, como aquí se los ponemos en la presentación, es una guía para las personas mexicanas que ya sea por nacimiento o por el derecho a la doble nacionalidad y que puedan recuperar su identidad y reintegrarse al país ejerciendo sus derechos. Estos son los puntos clave que ahorita tocaremos un poco como lo decía Sara. La intención es muy poco el tiempo aquí, no podemos profundizar en todos los temas, pero que sí conozcan lo que van a encontrar en la guía y que sepan que siempre desde Appleseed y que hemos podido colaborar coordinando el apoyo de tantos despachos de alta reputación, podamos ofrecerles mayor ayuda. La siguiente, por favor. Entonces, aquí les hablamos un poco del tipo de preguntas y temas que aborda la guía y hablamos de lo que es el retorno a su lugar de origen. Y desafortunadamente, y lo hablo con la tristeza como mexicana, es que no nada más hablamos del retorno por una posible retorno voluntario, forzoso o deportación, sino también hablamos del desplazamiento interno que nos está aquejando mucho en el país. Entonces, esta guía también sería para aquellas personas mexicanas que por alguna situación, tristemente a lo mejor por violencia, han tenido que cambiar su lugar de origen. Viene ahí toda la información. Hablamos nuevamente de lo que es la documentación. Ahorita tocaré un poco más al respecto. Hablamos de todo lo que es la alimentación, educación, vivienda, servicios médicos. Y alimentación nos referimos hasta albergues, tanto gubernamentales como de la sociedad civil, donde poder encontrar comedores comunitarios. Toda esa información ahorita lo vamos a abordar un poquito más. Cuentas bancarias, remesas, que es muy importante, empleo y medios de vida, los programas sociales disponibles para las personas mexicanas en retorno o desafortunadamente por este desplazamiento interno. Reunificación familiar con todos los temas de derechos parentales que esto implica, ya sea que estos hijos, hijas de connacionales se hayan quedado en Estados Unidos o vengan con la familia, dónde y cómo encontrar asistencia legal pro bono, y también estos procesos que si desafortunadamente su regreso fue intempestivo, ya sea voluntario o por deportación, ¿qué hago si ya estoy en México y tengo que tener trámites en los Estados Unidos? Estos son más o menos los temas que reúne la guía para lo que son los derechos y servicios para personas mexicanas retornadas. La siguiente, por favor. Como decíamos, estamos buscando tener los servicios y presentar información concreta de los servicios disponibles, tanto, por ejemplo, de lo que es las comisiones estatales de atención a víctimas, comisiones de derechos humanos, albergues, servicios de salud, comedores, y nos enfocamos mucho en los estados de mayor retorno. Como aquí lo pueden ver, están los estados donde hemos concentrado mucho nuestra atención para darles mayor información. Baja California, Michoacán, Chiapas, Nuevo León, Chihuahua, Oaxaca, Coahuila, Sinaloa, Guerrero y Tamaulipas. También les presentamos los datos de los módulos de repatriación, del Instituto Nacional de Migración, que están ellos, digamos, expidiendo las constancias de repatriación y que son de mucha utilidad. Y aquí vienen en los estados y en la guía encontrarán los datos de contacto de estos módulos de repatriación del Instituto Nacional de Migración. Pasamos a la siguiente, por favor. ¿Qué temas cubre la guía? Este tema es fundamental: documentación y el derecho a la identidad. Todo mundo sabemos que esa identidad es la llave que da acceso a todos los derechos. Por eso es sumamente importante y volvemos a reiterar, el plan es tener un plan. Si tienen la posibilidad o ustedes, organizaciones de la sociedad civil que atienden a la comunidad de inmigrantes radicando en Estados Unidos, es importante que los orienten. Si no han tramitado la doble nacionalidad, que acudan a sus consulados. Muchas comunidades tienen el temor de que tener la nacionalidad mexicana ponga en riesgo o en duda la nacionalidad norteamericana. Esto no es así. Tenemos como mexicanos el derecho de tener doble nacionalidad. Apostillar sus documentos. Tienen que ir a la Secretaría de Estado. Es un trámite relativamente sencillo y va a ser mucho más útil que lo tengan listo, tanto para actas de nacimiento, documentos escolares, títulos. Todo esto es mucho más fácil que lo tramiten y lo tengan listo. Obviamente, en el caso de que hayan regresado a México, también nosotros en esta guía van a encontrar los trámites y dónde tramitarlos, los requisitos, qué documentos tienen que presentar para poder tener estos documentos de identidad, el costo y el tiempo que más o menos puede tener la respuesta. Los documentos más importantes en México en su regreso, obviamente, es esta constancia de repatriación, actas de nacimiento, es sumamente importante que las tengan. Si son actas de nacimiento de los Estados Unidos, reitero, el tema de la apostilla, pasaporte, credencial de elector que emite el Instituto Nacional Electoral. Este es sumamente importante para los mexicanos, que son los que tenemos derecho a adquirir ya que es una de las identificaciones oficiales que tiene biométricos y eso facilita mucho apertura de cuentas, empleo. Entonces, es importante. Si están regresando de los Estados Unidos o de otro país, pero regresan a México y no lo tienen, es uno de los documentos que son más relevantes para que los obtengan. Certificados escolares, el CURP, que a partir del 16 de octubre se tendrá un nuevo CURP, que es la clave única, ¿no? Y que expide RENAPO, que es la institución gubernamental a nivel nacional que ve todo el tema de población, y que ya se va a tener con biométricos. Entonces, a su regreso, recomendamos también que se les dé la información. El RFC, que es el registro, digamos, fiscal de contribuyentes, que también es importante para el reintegrarse a una vida laboral, al igual que el número de seguridad social. En temas de seguridad social es importante considerar que normalmente cuando uno obtiene un empleo, es un empleo formal, puede ser que tengas ese ingreso, ya sea al IMSS, que es el Instituto Mexicano de del Seguro Social, o al ISSSTE, que es para los empleados de gobierno. Sin embargo, también hay una opción de tener un registro voluntario al IMSS y esto también le da un acceso a la seguridad médica. Ya ahorita tocaremos un poco el tema. Licencia de conducir, obviamente escrituras. Aquí hemos encontrado un tema importante que muchos mexicanos al regresar a México quieren regularizar porque dejaron una vivienda, una propiedad a su nombre. También es importante que revisen este tipo de temas. Entonces, reitero, en la guía van a encontrar dónde, los requisitos, los costos y el tiempo de respuesta para obtener todos estos documentos. Pasamos a otro tema, alimentación, vivienda, igual como les comentaba anteriormente. Existen diferentes programas de alimentación en cada estado, es importante que los conozcan, así como los requisitos que se tienen para aplicar, la ubicación de comedores públicos o de la sociedad civil. En la guía también se ofrece un listado de albergues, igual, gubernamentales y de la sociedad civil, en estas ciudades fronterizas para apoyar a los mexicanos en retorno. También la guía brinda orientación sobre la protección de sus propiedades. También hablamos de lo que pudiera ser el despojo de propiedades y apoyos gubernamentales para vivienda, para adquirir vivienda social o para recibir apoyos de vivienda. También en la guía encontrarán esa información. Si quieren, pasamos a la siguiente. Gracias. Como les decía, tenemos los servicios médicos que si no son afiliados, ya sea al Instituto Mexicano del Seguro Social o al ISSSTE, que es para los trabajadores del Estado, existe el registro al IMSS Bienestar que ofrece, hay algunos centros comunitarios que también ofrecen servicios de salud. En todo lo que sea empleos y medios de vida, aquí encontrarán mucho de la información justamente y en alguna de las preguntas veía yo en el chat que nos hablaban de cómo revalidar estudios y certificar habilidades que se obtuvieron en su tiempo radicando en los Estados Unidos. En la guía también lo encontrarán. Vuelvo a decir, si aún esta comunidad que estamos atendiendo tienen la posibilidad, es mejor que busquen estos documentos, tenerlos en original, apostillarlos y en algunos casos hasta tener la traducción por un perito traductor. Los programas sociales que están actualmente disponibles para los mexicanos en retorno Es un programa que se llama México Te Abraza, donde dan también apoyos como la tarjeta del bienestar paisano, existe el programa Repatriación Digna y todos los programas de bienestar que se tienen para nosotros los mexicanos radicando en el país están disponibles para cualquier mexicano que regresa en cualquiera de sus modalidades. Estos programas es para adultos mayores, para estudiantes, que se llama Construyendo un Futuro, Sembrando Vida. O sea, existen muchos programas que en la guía se presentan y cómo aplicar a ellos. Creo que considero que es muy importante que sepan y ubiquen a qué programas sociales, becas en un momento dado para estudiantes, cuáles pueden aplicar. Hay oportunidades de empleo en México. El Sistema Nacional de Empleo marca que existen más de 2 millones de vacantes, dependiendo de niveles tanto de experiencia como de estudios. Es importante que busquen al Sistema Nacional de Empleo. Existen en los diferentes estados ferias de empleo, que también es importante, y en todo momento todo lo que pueda ser el autoempleo. Nuevamente, aquí en la guía encontrarán ese tipo de información. Lo que es cuentas bancarias y envío de remesas, se habla lo que son los canales formales. Sí recomendamos mucho que investiguen bien cómo está su cuenta. Sara lo decía, si tienen oportunidad, vayan a su banco, si aún están en Estados Unidos, para decir, ok, puedo llegar a regresar a México, de qué manera puedo seguir haciendo uso de mis bienes, digamos, de todo lo que tengo en el banco, o bien si debo cerrar una cuenta bancaria, una tarjeta de crédito. En la guía de Appleseed que Sara presentó en Estados Unidos, viene con todo detalle. En la de México también se habla cómo utilizar los cajeros automáticos, qué tipo de empresas remesadoras son las que se pueden utilizar, cómo abrir y qué niveles de cuentas se pueden abrir y los requisitos que se tienen para cada cuenta. Lo ideal sería encontrar un banco que tenga y la forma ya sea de transferir el dinero que tenían en los Estados Unidos y aperturar una nueva cuenta en México para que sea más sencillo el manejo de su dinero. Dependiendo de los documentos, obviamente van a poder abrir cuentas nivel 1, nivel 2, que también esto es importante para personas migrantes que están en México o las que ya tienen la condición de refugiado. Viene en la guía qué tipo de documentación se pide. Para un mexicano con un INE, por eso vuelvo a comentar que la credencial de elector es uno de los documentos de identidad que les van a facilitar mucho la apertura de cuentas, ya que cuentan con los biométricos necesarios que las instituciones de la banca múltiple solicitan para aperturar cuentas. Entonces, si no lo tienen, es importante que acudan al Instituto Nacional Electoral y soliciten esta identificación. Desafortunadamente también vemos que hay muchos temas de violencia, tanto de género, también como víctimas que han presenciado actos de violencia. Entonces, en la guía presentamos muy a detalle el tipo de apoyo psicosocial que se puede encontrar, cómo hacer una denuncia, cómo buscar protección, cómo se pueden tener hasta sistemas de alerta como para prevenir actos así. Y en temas de asistencia legal, por favor, al igual que Sara, existen alrededor de estas comunidades muchos gestores, abogados que ofrecen la ayuda. Por favor, si son ustedes organizaciones de la sociedad civil, garanticen que la asesoría que van a recibir sea de calidad y no se preste a un abuso económico por los servicios legales. En todos los estados, las universidades cuentan con servicios o clínicas legales que son pro bono. recomendamos acercarse dependiendo en el estado de retorno al que lleguen, buscar las opciones de asesoría legal pro bono, obviamente. También, y lo comentaba, la Fundación Barra Mexicana del Colegio Barra Mexicana, Colegio de Abogados, ofrece ese tipo de asesoría. Les recomendamos siempre dar datos que sean fuentes certeras, que sí les van a dar una asesoría legal de calidad y no va a haber un abuso por costos en gestoría de documentos, cuidado con eso, o en asesoría legal. Pasamos a la siguiente, por favor. Como les decía, también desafortunadamente estamos viviendo tiempos donde el desplazamiento interno está siendo algo importante. Víctimas de delito también viene ahí, desafortunadamente, y de verdad lo digo con toda la tristeza como mexicana, de personas no localizadas. Viene información en la guía que ustedes podrán revisar para dar información a las comunidades que atiendan, o si no se escuchan mexicanos en retorno, por favor, revisen la guía y busquen las fuentes oficiales. Y como les decía, pues tenemos muchos procesos en este retorno voluntario o forzoso. ¿Qué pasa? Yo regresé a México, ¿qué puedo hacer? No tuve tiempo para preparar todos mis documentos, no nombré a ese apoderado legal, perdón. ¿Cómo cubro mis derechos parentales si mi hijo, por ser ciudadano norteamericano, pues no fue deportado y quedó en los Estados Unidos? ¿Cómo puedo solicitar información? ¿Cómo puedo apostillar documentos ya estando en México? También en la guía viene este tipo de información, viene también el trámite de lo que sería el registro de la doble nacionalidad, ya si regresaron a México y sus hijos regresaron con los connacionales. La siguiente, y me parece que por ahí estamos terminando. Les quiero reiterar que la intención de esta guía va a ser socializarla con más organizaciones. Si consideran que alguna organización necesita y le va a ser útil esta guía, por favor, denle nuestros datos de contacto. Ya Maggie les puso en el chat y en la de preguntas y respuestas la liga para que puedan acceder a las dos, tanto a la de Appleseed Network, que es la de el manual de preparación ante una posible deportación, y la que desarrollamos en Appleseed México para cerrar esta pinza de información que es tan importante. Entonces, Bennett, muchas gracias. Con esto más o menos damos una breve explicación de lo que pueden encontrar en la guía.
Thank you so much, Maru. Really appreciate it. Before we wrap up, a quick note that we understand from some attendees that the Appleseed Mexico webpage with the resource that Maru was describing, that webpage was down briefly during Maru's presentation. The website is up again, so you should be able to access the guide now on the link in the chat. We've also posted the PDF in the chat as well. I want to thank you all again very much for joining us today. You'll be receiving follow-up communications from us with the slides, recording, the guides, and we'll also be sending you updates with the interactive website that Sarah mentioned for the deportation preparation manual goes live, as well as when the manual is translated into additional languages. As always, please feel free to contact us at any time at info@appleseednetwork.org. We would love to hear from you and to partner with you on these important issues. Thank you all again so much for joining us, and I hope you all have a very wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Carla, for the translation.